So, what if the healthiest thing you could possibly do after a profound loss isn't, letting go, but actually holding on tighter?
Right, which totally goes against the grain.
Exactly. Because society loves to sell us this concept of closure. We hear it all the time, right? It's
hmm
handed to us like this very specific, almost mechanical script.
Yeah, it's very much a checklist.
Right. Like you experience a loss, you process the feelings, you pack up your emotional boxes, put them away in the attic, and boom, you step back out into the world with a clean slate. I mean, that is the finish line we are all supposedly sprinting toward.
It is, and it's a fundamentally linear view of human emotion. The conventional wisdom for a very long time has just treated grief as a problem to be solved.
Yeah, like an equation or something.
Exactly. The underlying assumption is that your default state is fine and the loss is just a temporary interruption. So the goal is to get back to fine as efficiently as possible. And that supposedly requires severing your attachment to whatever or whoever you lost.
And like if you are still visibly carrying that weight months or years later, there's this unspoken societal judgment. People look at you with this quiet concern, wondering why you haven't just moved on yet. But today, okay, let's unpack this because we are exploring a profoundly moving text that completely shatters that expectation.
It really does. It flips the whole concept on its head.
It does. So, welcome to today's deep dive. We're unpacking a short but honestly incredibly rich essay titled I Shall Go to Him, Grieving with Hope.
A really beautiful piece of writing.
Truly. And our mission today is to take the ideas in this text, which bridge this ancient biblical narrative with a major breakthrough in modern psychology, and use them to fundamentally reframe how we understand healing. If you have ever felt guilty for, I don't know, still talking to a loved one who passed away years ago, or felt like you were somehow failing at grief, you're going to want to hear this. This is going to change everything.
It's a critical paradigm shift for sure. And I think it's important to note, we're not here to offer simple answers or toss out like quick, easy comfort for the absolute mystery of death. The essay doesn't do that either.
No, it's definitely not a quick fix.
Right. Instead, it presents this deeply human, deeply spiritual truth. The idea that a change in a relationship does not mean the end of love. We are actively moving away from that vocabulary of closure and stepping into the space of enduring connection.
Which is just so refreshing. But to really get to the bottom of how this works, the author actually starts us off in a place you might not expect. Not in a modern therapist's office, but thousands of years ago.
Yeah, offering us a really fascinating historical case study.
Right. It's a story from a biblical narrative that perfectly illustrates a reaction to loss that, well, on the surface, feels completely counterintuitive. We are talking about King David and his infant son.
Yeah, and this is considered one of the most painful narratives in the text. The focus is really on a very specific sequence of events regarding David's behavior as a father.
Because his reaction is just so intense.
It is absolute distress.
Yeah.
When his child becomes gravely ill, David completely falls apart. I mean, he fasts, he weeps, he spends the entire night lying on the dirt floor, pleading for the child's life. He's entirely consumed by the impending loss.
Which makes total sense, right? That is the visceral, desperate reaction we expect when a parent is watching the life of their child hang in the balance. The sheer terror is palpable. His servants are watching him agonize over this child while there is still breath.
What then?
Right. The turning point arrives. The child dies. And this is where David's reaction becomes incredibly jarring to everyone in the room, because according to the story, once the child actually passes away, David doesn't collapse further.
No, he does the exact opposite.
Yeah, he rises from the ground, he washes himself, he worships, and then he asks for food and breaks his fast.
And you have to understand, his servants were terrified to even tell him the child had died. They assumed he might harm himself.
Right, they were bracing for the worst.
Exactly. So when he simply gets up and eats, they are completely bewildered. They cannot reconcile his previous agony with his current calm.
I have to admit, the first time I encountered this, I was pushing back on the narrative right alongside those confused servants. Because, I mean, doesn't his reaction seem totally backward?
It really does seem that way at first glance.
Right. Usually we expect the intense mourning, the real debilitating grief, to begin at the moment of death. We don't expect it to suddenly stop. It feels so jarring. It's almost like, okay, think of it this way. It's almost like studying for a massive exam with intense panic, right? You're pulling all-nighters, you are sweating, you are stressed out of your mind.
Oh, we've all been there.
Exactly. But then The moment you find out you actually failed the exam, you just calmly pack up your bags and go out to dinner. To anyone watching, it looks like complete denial or shock. It looks like a break from reality.
It does look like that. But what's fascinating here is David's own explanation. It reveals the exact opposite of denial.
Oh, right, because they actually ask him what he's doing.
They do. When his servants finally ask him to explain himself, David gives a very specific response, recorded in 2 Samuel 12:23. He says, "I shall go to him, but he will not return to me."
Wow.
Yeah. He isn't in denial. He isn't experiencing a psychotic break or just brushing off the loss. He is articulating a profound shift in his reality. See, while the child was alive, David was pleading for a physical life. He was fighting for the earthly relationship to continue.
He was trying to change an outcome that was still in flux.
Precisely. But once the child dies, David accepts that the earthly outcome is now fixed. He will not return to me. He knows the physical bond is irrevocably broken. But, and this is the crucial part, he realizes the bond itself isn't eradicated. By saying, "I shall go to him," he shifts his state of grief. He acknowledges a continuing spiritual connection. As the author beautifully puts it, David isn't erasing his sorrow. He is giving his sorrow a direction.
Giving sorrow a direction. I mean, that phrase fundamentally changes the posture of grief, doesn't it?
Co-
He isn't looking backward at what he lost, trying to drag a physical reality into the present. He's looking forward to a reality where that connection still exists, just in a different form. It's this shift from frantic pleading to a quiet, grounded hope.
Yeah, it's a very active realization.
But, hearing that story, it is an ancient king's intuitive emotional survival strategy. How does that translate to the rest of us living today?
Well, that is the bridge the essay builds so effectively. It takes this ancient instinct, the instinct to maintain a connection rather than sever it, and points out how modern science eventually caught up to validate this exact coping mechanism.
Wait, really? Modern science backed this up?
Yes, the instinct David showed thousands of years ago is the very thing clinical psychologists finally realized was the healthiest way to process loss.
That jump from, 1000 BCE to 1996 is fascinating, because the text introduces a psychological framework established by 3 researchers, right? Dennis Klass, Phyllis Silverman, and Stephen Nickman.
Yeah, the pioneers of this new understanding.
They published this landmark book called Continuing Bonds, New Understandings of Grief. And to understand why this was such a big deal, we have to look at what they were up against in the field.
Oh, absolutely. The prevailing wisdom in psychology for most of the 20th century was that healing meant severing the attachment to the deceased.
The whole closure thing again.
Right. The clinical term often associated with those older models was decathexis. It essentially means the withdrawal of emotional energy.
Decathexis. That sounds so clinical and cold.
It is. The belief was that human beings have a finite amount of emotional energy. If you keep investing that energy into someone who is no longer there, you're wasting it. And supposedly, you won't have enough left to invest in new, living relationships. So moving on, letting go, severing the tie, that was the clinical goal.
But wait, I mean, isn't there a risk there? If we don't move on and sever that tie, how do we prevent ourselves from just living in the past? If you are constantly maintaining a bond with someone who isn't physically there, doesn't that keep you from accepting reality?
That is exactly what the older models feared. But it totally misunderstands how the human brain processes relationships.
Oh, interesting. How so?
Well, the difference between living in the past and carrying the past forward comes down to how the brain maps our connections. Our brains map relationships spatially and chronologically.
Okay, spatially meaning like where they are.
Yes. Spatially, the brain expects the person to physically exist somewhere, maybe in the next room or across town. Chronologically, the brain expects to see them tomorrow or next week. When a profound loss occurs, the brain is suddenly flooded with errors. The person isn't in the next room. You won't see them tomorrow.
Because the physical map is completely broken.
Exactly. So the old letting go model basically told patients to delete the entire file, erase the map, just wipe it clean.
Wow.
But what Klass, Silverman, and Nickman discovered in their 1996 research is that healthy healing doesn't mean deleting the file. It means rewriting it.
Rewriting it.
Yes. Continuing bonds work by helping the brain remap the relationship. You move it from an external physical presence to an internal psychological and spiritual one. You aren't living in the past expecting them to walk through the door. You accept that they won't. But you intentionally keep their influence, their memory, and your love for them active in your present life.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because that changes everything about how we view the process. It proves that human beings heal by finding a new way to remain connected. The relationship changes, but the love
That's
remains.
the core of it, yes.
It actually makes me think of the way we treat the space we live in. Like the old model of grief is like treating your loss as a lease you have to terminate.
Oh, I like that comparison.
Right. You pack your bags, hand over the keys, and move out so you can move on to a new house.
It's a very transactional, almost violent view of human emotion. You are essentially amputating a part of your own history.
Yes. But this continuing bonds model realizes that your grief isn't a lease you can cancel, it's a house you own. And instead of moving out, you are actively remodeling the house to accommodate a very different, very difficult new reality.
That's a great way to visualize it.
The love doesn't get evicted, it just lives in a new room that you've had to build for it.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this framework is a massive relief. Because human beings are biologically and emotionally wired for connection, death doesn't magically turn off that wiring.
Right, you can't just flip a switch.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The core thesis of the continuing bonds research is that changing the relationship from a physical reality to a memory-based or spiritual reality keeps that wiring intact safely. It redefines healing. Healing goes from being an act of severing to an act of transforming.
Severing versus transforming. Man, when you put it like that, the 1996 framework just feels infinitely more humane. We aren't forcing people to cut away parts of their own hearts just to be deemed healthy.
No, not at all.
And that brings us to, honestly, the most poignant part of the essay. Having established the historical precedent with David and the psychological validation of continuing bonds, the author brings this concept directly into the emotional reality of the present day, speaking directly to people who are actively mourning right now.
Yes, the focus shifts to parents grieving a child, offering what the text calls a tender truth. It states quite plainly, and this is so vital, you do not have to remove your child from your heart in order to heal.
You do not have to remove your child from your heart in order to heal. That line is so powerful because it goes against literally everything that well-meaning people often tell a grieving parent.
It's the ultimate validation. And the essay then explores the practical mechanisms of this.
Yeah.
Like, what does a continuing bond actually look like on a daily basis?
Right. How do you actually do it?
It outlines that we carry our lost loved ones in very specific ways. In prayer, in memory, in gratitude, in tears, and in hope.
I want to pause on the word tears there. Because usually when someone is crying over a loss years later, society views that as a setback. We think, oh no, they are regressing. They aren't over it.
Which is such a damaging way to look at
Well,
it.
it is. But if we apply the continuing bonds framework, the tears aren't a sign of failing to heal. The sorrow itself is a manifestation of the continuing bond. It is the love taking a different shape for a moment. You aren't crying because you are broken. You are crying because you are still connected.
That is a crucial distinction. The tears are evidence of the relationship. And the essay broadens this by incorporating a really powerful faith perspective, too.
Oh, right.
It notes that faith does not ask us to deny grief or sweep it under the rug. Rather, it invites us to grieve with love. There's an incredibly striking line where the author writes, "In God no love is wasted, no tear is unseen, and no child is forgotten."
Which perfectly aligns with the psychology we just talked about. Nothing is wasted. The file isn't deleted. The love isn't voided just because the physical presence is gone.
Exactly. Death changes the relationship, but it does not destroy love.
So what does this all mean? When we look at the immediate application of this, how this actually changes a life today, it gives people permission to stop fighting their own memories. Like, if you find yourself talking out loud to a friend who passed away or, setting a place for someone in your heart during a holiday, you aren't stuck.
Not at all.
You are practicing exactly what modern psychology and ancient wisdom both say is a healthy, necessary continuation of a bond.
But this raises an important question,
Yeah.
because acknowledging that individually just isn't enough.
Yeah.
It requires a shift in how we operate communally.
Oh, as a society.
Yeah. If we accept that continuing bonds are a healthy, normal way to process loss, it fundamentally challenges how friends, family, and colleagues support those who are mourning.
Oh, absolutely. Because right now, our communities are still very much stuck in that move-on mindset. We want our friends to feel better, so we accidentally rush them toward this mythical finish line of closure.
We do. Out of our own discomfort with their pain, honestly, we pressure them to get over it. To truly support someone, we have to abandon that pressure entirely. We need to stop asking grieving people when they are going to find closure.
Yeah, that question has to go.
Instead, we should be asking them how they are honoring their continuing bond. By making that shift, we allow them to integrate their life healthily into their ongoing lives. We stop forcing them to choose between healing and remembering.
We let them remodel the house without standing in their front yard yelling at them to just move out already.
Exactly. We witness the remodeling and we validate the new space they're creating for that love.
It is such a profound shift in perspective. So, just to trace the journey we've taken today, we started with the confusing, jarring grief of an ancient king. David seemed to stop mourning the moment his child died, but as we uncovered, he wasn't stopping at all.
He was pivoting.
Right. He was giving his sorrow a direction, shifting from a desperate physical fight to an acknowledgement of a continuing spiritual connection. Then, we explored how that exact instinct was validated 3,000 years later by the 1996 psychological research of Klass, Silverman, and Nickman. They proved that the human brain heals not by severing ties and deleting the file, but by transforming the relationship, proving that continuing bonds are the healthiest way forward.
And that brought us to the practical daily truth of carrying our loved ones. Through prayer, through memory, through tears, and through hope, the love remains completely intact. It simply takes a new shape.
Yeah. So, whether you are actively supporting a grieving friend right now, or you are simply a curious learner wanting to understand the depths of the human condition, you now have a powerful new lens for viewing loss. It is not an ending of love. It is a change in the relationship.
And as we close out this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over. Something that builds strictly on this idea of a changing relationship.
Okay, let's hear it.
If continuing bonds means our relationship with a lost loved one continues to exist and evolve, what does that relationship look like a decade or even 50 years down the line?
Oh, that is fascinating. Because we aren't static, we keep changing.
We do. As we continue to grow, age, and completely transform as individuals, how might the memories and the gratitude we carry reshape themselves? How does the love of someone you lost decades ago adapt its shape to comfort the totally new version of yourself that you are yet to become? The bond doesn't just continue, it grows and matures alongside you.
Wow. That is a beautiful concept to carry forward. It brings us right back to the myth of closure we started with. The truth we've uncovered today is that there is no final box to tape shut. There is no attic to hide things away in. Instead of closing the door on those we've lost, we get to keep the door open. We invite the love into the new rooms we build, and we let that continuing bond live alongside us, adapting and growing every single step of the way.